Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you. Great to be back on the podcast. Today was a rough start to the morning. I got up. This is the weirdest thing. I was thinking about working out. It's so weird. We reject it and we make excuses for not working out or doing anything we know we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And we try to convince ourselves that we deserve a day off and all this kind of stuff. And then you force yourself to do it and you feel better.
Yeah. And you don't regret it.
You don't regret it. And you know you're going to feel better. And yet you still fight against it every single morning. If you're like me anyways, it's just a constant fight. Why? So this morning, what happened is I woke up and I peeked out of my window and I can see my truck from the window. And we have these little creature comforts where I can actually start my truck from the house, the warm house. So I start my truck and I start getting changed, but I don't hear my truck turn on. I'm like, what the heck? So I look out and I try to start it again and it doesn't start. I'm like, this is stupid. I'm going to have to go outside and actually turn my truck on like a peasant. So I go out there and, I'm in my underwear and I go out there and I turn the truck on and it won't turn over. I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I've got this little USB jump start thing. So it's -6 degrees. So I'm like, well, maybe it's the cold. So I try to jump it won't start. And I go inside and my youngest son's like, oh, it ran out of gas probably, Dad. I'm like, it didn't run out of gas. Okay. It just won't start. So I'm trying to go out there and figure out how to get my truck started because I want to go to the gym. It's going to make me feel better. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, maybe I don't need to go to the gym. Like this is a way out. This is a convenient excuse. So I'm trying to mess around with it. And this is a really long story, but the gas cans are ridiculous today. They have all these little safety features and safety protocols. And you try to put them in and they spill everywhere, or you can't even get the dang thing to open up. It's just a ridiculous thing. So I want to go back to the old, we called them donkey dicks in the military, where it's just the hose and that's it. There's no safety feature. Anyways, I go back inside and my youngest son is like, Dad, it just ran out of gas. I'm like, it didn't run out of gas. Okay. It's not gas. I'm like, I go back outside. I'm like, oh, you know what? The fuel light did come on yesterday and I had to hurry and get home. Crap, maybe it is just the gas. And so I pour some gas in it. Sure enough, it fires right up.
Fires that up.
Over. So I went in. I'm like, hey, you were right. It was out of gas. And so I went into the gym and I'm like, well, I don't have much time. I'll just do part of my workout. This is a really long story. Anyways, I ended up doing my full workout. I feel better. I feel good. And guys, long story short, let's not resist the things we know we should be doing. Let's just do it to the best of our ability, knowing that it's good for us and it's going to make us feel better. So I'm feeling better after a weird start to my morning.
I would have mic dropped at, son, you were right. The truck was out of gas. I could, that's like the win for the day right there.
Totally. Oh,
that's so hard.
It's embarrassing when you run out of gas.
Yes. Well, screw the workout. The harder thing for me is coming in the house and going, yes, son, you were right. It was out of gas, right? That's probably harder than an hour workout.
Yeah. And it's embarrassing, no man should ever run out of gas, but I was running an errand with my daughter yesterday because she wanted to make crepes and I'd promised her we're going to make crepes and I completely forgot Saturday night. We'd make breakfast Sunday morning. So Sunday morning I slept in, she woke up and I heard her. She's like, are we making crepes? I'm like, we don't have time. I got to go to church. No, we went to the store, but I had to hurry and get back. So I didn't make it to the gas station. So anyways, woe is me. Okay. Enough about me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you guys and your questions and talk about your troubles, not my troubles.
Yeah. We like beating up your troubles instead of sharing ours sometimes. So
yeah. And they're not even troubles. It's all good. Like everything is good.
The power of the conversation. So we'll have a conversation with the gentleman from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. We'll be opening that up roughly in about 15 days. So stay tuned. Be ready to join us in roughly about a couple weeks. All right. Colton Briner. I'm currently working in my family business. I am the best operator in the company and do not see opportunities to grow. Plus, the upper management culture is not one I desire to be like. And the way that my father and I's relationship, according to his wife, is not good for our family. I want to branch out in other industries like fitness, self-sustainability, where I actually have passion to help others and improve themselves. But we are in the midst of an economic downturn. My second child is on the way, and my one son has special needs, which takes up my wife's time. This is making me the sole provider. My question is, do I switch industries for an uncertain job and possibly have to move in with her parents, or look for another company where I can use my skills in the meantime and start something on the side? I apologize for the long background, but I think it's necessary. Thanks for all you do.
So I'm reminded of Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, which is a very stoic principle right here. You're looking at two different options. Do I continue doing this miserable work that I don't enjoy and I hate? Or do I branch out and go do this other thing that I might be more passionate about, but got a special needs child, my wife's at home, I'm the sole provider, we don't want to move in with my parents. And those are the two options. I actually don't think those are the two options. From where I sit, with the limited information I have, I would say that the third option is to make the most of your time right now where you are. Do everything that you can in your power to make that meaningful, to enhance the business, to consider solutions that might move the business forward while you're building something up over here on the side. You can do fitness, you can do lifestyle stuff. Like, this is what I did when I started Order of Man. I had my financial planning practice, very lucrative. The business was doing well. And over here on the side, a couple hours in the morning before I went into work, a couple hours after the kids went to bed, and we're off and running. And it took us about 7 months to make our first dollar. And it took me about a year and a quarter, year and a half, somewhere right in there, to be making what I would say is respectable money. So I think there's an option for you to provide some solutions at your business. The other cool thing about this is, consider that your current business, and this is a family business, and here's how I would show a little appreciation to them, is they're financing your opportunity to go out and do something else. Because if you were going to college to learn how to do something else, you'd have to pay for it. But right now, somebody's paying you. They're financing your dream. So use what you can with the time there, serve the company, but also they're serving you. And you have some moments here to create something that might take 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, but you could build something very cool here while you're not putting your family's finances at risk.
Yeah. I mean, just to magnify what you said, best operator in the company, I see opportunities to grow. Create opportunities. Is there, have you communicated that? Have you thought about, like you say, and I'm projecting a little bit on you here, Colton, but I don't like upper management culture. Okay, awesome. If you were able to change it, what would it be? Have you fleshed that out? Have you fleshed out what the ideal upper management culture is? Have you thought about ways that you can show up more powerfully to change that? Like, this is a great learning opportunity, back to what you said, Ryan, for you to kind of flush out these details and even see it as a game. All right, why I'm here, why I'm still learning, I'm going to figure out, how do I influence people? How do I change the culture? How could I change the culture from my position without being in a leadership position? And what are the resources necessary? And research and figure that out. You might find that you can find that passion to help others literally where you are right now. I'm not saying this is where you have to stay, but I'm just saying the same thing you've already said. There's all these little nuances I'm seeing in here where you could grow and magnify what's been placed before you, and you might be able to make something great and amazing.
Or not, and you use the time wisely. Yeah. Like, you might, I know we talk about this question quite often, and we're pretty standard on our approach to it. It's either going to work or it's not. But the alternative to not making the most of your time right now is to not make the most of your time right now. And then you're going to look back over 6 months or a year, or maybe even 5 years, and ask yourself, what in the world was I doing with all of that time? There's only two options here: make the most of it or make the least of it. What's the better option? And something will come out better if you make the most of it.
And to make this a little bit more black and white, Ryan, what I'm hearing from you, though, is your job is to provide right now, not to go have fun, move back in with the parents and figure out a side hustle. Like, take care from a financial place. Would you say that? Or are you saying, hey, you know what? Move back in with parents.
I'm not saying you shouldn't move in with your folks. I'm not saying that. Maybe that is a prudent decision at the current stage right now. I don't know. I don't know enough about your situation to say you should or should not do that. I'm just suggesting that there may be an option that you're not looking at and exploring yet. You're exploring A and B, and I'm asking you to look for C and D and E and F and all these other options that you haven't pursued or even considered yet.
Yeah. Check. All right. Next question. Jordan Cook. What questions should you ask yourself to determine if you are ready to propose to your girlfriend and move closer towards marriage?
Well, if there was one question, wouldn't that be convenient? There's an infinite number of questions. Now look, you could get into this, paralysis by analysis if you ask yourself all of those questions. But I would say this. Here's a couple of questions just off the cuff. Do I love her? That's probably the first one. Do I love her? Or, is it convenient? Is it filling a need that I have that I can't fill on my own? Or do I genuinely love this woman? Is she the one that I want to be with? I would also ask if she loves me. Not, am I filling a need that she has, or, a void that she can't solve on her own? Is this a genuine relationship out of, I don't need you, I love you, and I want you? And both parties need to be on the same page. The other question I think is really important is, when it comes to the big life issues, are you aligned? And the big life issues, I would say, would be family planning, would be your spiritual beliefs, would be your political beliefs, I think, are also important. Political and cultural beliefs, how you handle your finances, your belief about money and finances, and also your family dynamic. Does she want to work? Does she want to stay at home? These types of questions. And if those are in line, if you love her, she loves you, and those big factors are aligned, I would say you're probably on the right path.
I like it.
Would you add anything else to that?
I mean, the only thing that crosses my mind, and I don't even know, someone asked me this question, I swear, like last week, but someone was saying something about like a key thing to look for in a relationship or whatever. And the first thing that came to my mind is, do they have a growth mindset? Because without that, there's no growth, right? There's no like humility enough to consider and to improve. And so that would be really important to me. If they're fixed and they're kind of like, well, this is the way I am, and that'd be like a major red flag for me.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I think the alignment on all those big issues is critical. And if there's anything slightly bothering you, just assume that that's going to bother you a lot more, right? Like, that's the other pitfall I've seen, is people think like, well, once we're married, then this won't bother me, right? Or they may not do this anymore once we get married, or whatever. Just assume they're not changing, and all the things that slightly bother you are going to bother you more. And if you're okay with that, solid. But don't expect anyone to show up differently just because you got married. That's a huge, huge pitfall that a lot of guys fall into as well.
Well, and little trivial bothers aren't a deal breaker. Like, maybe she chews her food weird and it bothers you. Okay, that's
unacceptable.
You just need to communicate with her, right? And I think this actually goes to growth mindset and love. If she does weird things just like you do, maybe she's mad that you don't ever put the toilet seat down. Okay, so put the toilet seat down. Like, that doesn't need, like, I know we're men, but we can do that. If she eats weird, maybe she can work on not eating as weird or annoying. I'm just making things up here, but to your point, if there are little things that bother you, you should talk about those little things and be open about those little things, but don't let little things be a deterrent. It's the big things about, like, for example, the way she communicates. That's a big one. Does she shut down and run away, or is she accusatory or confrontational? okay, these are bigger issues that probably should be addressed before you jump into marriage.
Yeah. Does her happiness and joy seem independent of you? That's another major thing. Like if she's like, she'll immediately go in a bad mood because you're in a bad mood, or she's very dependent on how you show up. That might be a major red flag. But I think it goes back to like, do you love them, and what's the root of the love for one another? Is it really found in like building a gap or whatever?
Right. Yeah, so, I think we can nitpick it to death, but at the end of the day, do you both love each other, meaning you want to be in the relationship and grow together? And then some of those bigger factors that need to be taken into consideration. And some of those might be a deal breaker. So for example, we'll stop beating a dead horse after this, but let's say that you're really interested in having kids and she's not, and she wants to be on the corporate path. Look, you could love her all you want. She could love you all that she can. But at the end of the day, if you really are adamant about having a family and having her at home, and she's adamant about not having a family or starting later and being on the career path, that to me, in my book, that's a deal breaker. Like I know we love each other, but that's not the only consideration here. And this is important to me. These are the boundaries I have. And if we're not aligned, we can't partner. We can't do this.
Yeah. Wayne McPherson, how important is it to have a partner who challenges you, either by how she gets after it on her own life, career, and parenting, or how she encourages and challenges you to be a better man? How important is to have a partner that does that?
It's crucial. I mean, there would be no reason for marriage or any relationship if it wasn't challenging in some way. But hear me when I say this. I'm not talking about being a pain in the ass. So don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Challenging doesn't mean pain in the ass. Like we're all a thorn in each other's sides from time to time. And again, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like you genuinely don't gel with this woman. And it's just a constant annoyance and nuisance and bother and fighting and contention. That's different. To go back to what we were saying earlier about loving, you could challenge somebody from a loving position, and that's what you need. You need somebody to challenge you in a meaningful way that actually loves you.
Yeah, that's
I care about you enough.
Caring.
Yes. Yeah. Now, the way, look, it might come across like we're picking on women, but this goes for both men and women. The way that she's challenging you and the way you're challenging her needs to be evaluated. Is it coming from a position of love and care for this person? Yeah. Number one. And number two, am I doing it in a way that they respond to? So, for example, a woman might say that she really loves her home and the house, and she wants to make it a beautiful, loving place for her family. And so she just nitpicks and nags her husband on every little thing around the house. Now, you could say it's coming from a place of love for the family and care and her position in the home. But if she's nagging all the time and it just becomes contentious, then maybe she should analyze the way that she's challenging her husband, and maybe there's a more constructive way to do it. Same thing with a husband. Here's where a lot of guys, I think from my perspective, and I've got this wrong a lot in my life, where I'm very self-help driven and oriented. I want to learn about mindset and skill sets and systems and processes to improve my life and how to make life better. That's me. And so I might pick up a new book. Maybe it's Atomic Habits by James Clear as one to just throw out there, or a new book by David Goggins. I think it's called Never Finished. So I pick that up and then I give it to her and I say, you should read this because it would help you with your own journey or whatever. We as men tend to believe that in order for her to grow, she needs to be growing like us. And you know what would be better in my wife's situation is not to get her a book from David Goggins, but to get her a book on beekeeping or food preservation or how to set up the classroom at home, something that is more engaging for her. I was at church the other day and they have a library where you can borrow a book and put one back. And there was a book, I don't even know what it was. It was a fictional book about something about bees. And it was a fictional story. And I saw it and I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And I grabbed it and I said, hey, I found this in the library. I thought you might be interested in it. That's what I'm talking about. You know, it's love. Obviously, I'm interested in what she's interested in. It's, hey, you don't have to read a David Goggins book. I know that's not going to be your thing, but here's a book. It's fictional on bees, and you know, she's read it. She enjoyed the book. Like, that's how we can be more supportive and even challenging in a way. It's the way that we do it. But yeah, having something that drives you and pushes you to be better and improve is crucial. Why would you want to be with somebody who doesn't do that for you?
Yeah.
That'd be weird.
I think one of the greatest gifts that we have been given is agency. And so when we look to influence people, it should never be in the space of taking away someone's freedom or agency, but to encourage it. And so I use this from an employee perspective. I wrote this down actually last week in a meeting. I said, employees should not be constrained by requirement, but driven by choice. And we can all evaluate that for ourselves right now. And I know that's true. There's a big difference when my wife comes to the table in a way that it's like constraining me by requirement, right? And how I show up in that example versus when I show up from a perspective of agency and driven by choice, and it's on my terms, it's different. It's so much different. I bought into it. I like the idea of it. It's on my terms. Like, there's a big difference here. And I've stole this from you, Ryan, over the years, of the example of, you know, you getting your kids to clean their room. Is it the room? No, it's not the room. It's what we want them to learn, right? And we want them to learn, but empower them, that we believe in them and the importance of something. And it's no different. I'm not saying we're manipulating our spouses like we might with our kids a little bit, but that's how humans work. So how do we challenge in a way that empowers them, but doesn't take away their agency, and they don't act out of because you're going to stonewall them or you're going to withhold love from them if they don't do something? That's fleeting anyway. And it's going to just be loaded with resentment and contention the entire time, even though you might get what you need temporarily.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about it. And I actually addressed this in the book, The Masculinity Manifesto, the concept of compliance versus commitment. Yeah. You can get somebody to comply. You can probably get your wife to comply just the way she can get you to comply on, you know, doing that project around the house that she's been telling you about for 6 months. You know, you can get each other to comply, but what inherently comes with compliance? Resentment. I mean, of course. And you do that enough over time, you're both really going to be resentful towards each other. And a lot of it may not even be vocalized, which is even worse. Yeah. Because then it just builds and builds and builds, and one day it finally erupts. Or you can be committed to each other. A great example of this with my son, my second son. You know, of course, we want them to clean their room. They're up in the attic, and my oldest son and my second son have this big space in the attic. It's awesome. The perfect. The only problem with it from a kid's perspective is that it's in the attic, which is loud, so they can't sneak around. If it was in the basement, it would be ideal, but it's in the attic. So it's awesome. And I want them to keep their place clean. Well, my second son is really into shoes. He loves shoes, Nikes, designer shoes, things like this. And so he's got a bunch. Like I think he's got 11 or 12 different shoes that he's bought, and he wants to display them and have them neat. And I'm always complaining about cleaning their room. And he's got all these shoes. Well, several months ago, we decided to build some shelves. And guess what? That was a way of organizing his room. But you know how committed he was to that? Totally bought in. Hey, Dad, can we build shelves this weekend? Also known as, hey, Dad, can we organize my room this weekend? Now, what would we normally do? No, I'm busy. I don't want to do that. We'll do it later. And I would normally do that. But I realized, he's actually committed to doing what I want him to do, which is to clean his room and organize his space, even to a slight degree. So we went to Walmart. We got a few little shelving brackets. We got some LED lights on a timer that he paid for himself, so he could light his shoes up and have them different colors. It was awesome. And how committed was he? I didn't have to nag him about straightening his room or putting his shoes away. He was on it because it was something that was interesting to him.
Totally. So Shane Moody has actually a specific question around this. Actually, it's perfect alignment here. His question, many of our wives deal with depression and anxiety issues related to pregnancy. Do you have any advice on how to approaching the subject with her to encourage her to get help without coming across like we think that there's something wrong with her? Any word tracks, resources, or general thoughts? So kind of a specific of like, how do we influence in a way that is empowering, that doesn't come across like they're broken, specific to Shane's scenario?
Well, so my wife and I have had this conversation, and it's very interesting because when we were talking about this, she had pointed out to me that anytime there was any friction in our relationship, I would see how I could help her. And I thought the way that I interpreted it, or at least meant it, was that I care about you. I want to help you. I want you to be okay. And the way that she interpreted it was that I was unwilling to examine myself. And that if there was something in the relationship, it must be something wrong with her.
Yeah.
And now that I know that, and she vocalized that actually, I could see that makes sense. So what I would say first and foremost is, before you worry about her depression and what she's dealing with and how she's having a hard time and what you can do to help, I would strongly examine yourself. And there's a very specific reason for this, but are you working out? Are you journaling? What's your spirituality like right now? What's your emotional mindset? What are your goals and desires and ambitions look like? What is your integrity? Are you doing the things? What things need to be rooted out of your life, whether it's a substance abuse or anything like this, or certain behaviors? What needs to be rooted out? Worry about that first, because if you do that, and she's going to acknowledge and see that, she might not acknowledge it, but she'll see it, then she knows that at least you're willing to work on yourself. Like, at least you're coming from a position of what I would say is authority. Because if you're a fat, lazy slob who can't do what he says he's going to do, and then you go to her and you're like, how can I help you? She's like, bro, you can't even help yourself, let alone help me. Who gives you the right to talk to me about what I'm dealing with when you can't even fix and handle your own baggage? And I'm speaking from experience on this one. So you better make sure before you start talking with her about how you can help her, even if it's coming from a position of care, that you have things locked in. And I'll tell you what, that's one of the reasons you can help her. You better dial your stuff in to its maximum efficiency. Go ahead, Kip.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say there's a little bit of like a black belt move in there. And I actually do think that sometimes, Ryan, we'll hear what you're saying and then we'll go off. Won't communicate and we'll double down, man. I'll grind it out. I'll become a better man. And I might even learn stuff, but I'm not sharing them with my spouse. Guys, there's power in sharing. So you want to help her? What areas are you depressed about, or where you have anxiety? And share. Don't share from the perspective of like, oh, hey, honey, I learned this thing that you should do. Hey, honey, look what I learned. This is a breakthrough for me. I read 5 agreements or the 4 agreements. Dude, I love this chapter about blah, blah, blah. And really share from an area with where you're moving, touching, and inspiring around what you got out of it, right? And what you're going to do about it. That's powerful. It's the power of testimony. As you know, in the LDS church, the power of it is what? People share an idea, but they're not preaching at me. And so the natural human behavior of, well, is that right? Do I agree? Do I disagree? Doesn't even happen. I just listen. It's like a parable. I listen to the nice story. And then if I'm smart enough, or if I'm ready to receive it, I go, I wonder how that's applicable to me in my life. And I consider on my terms versus it being preached at me. Whenever someone preaches at you, immediately the human behavior is what? Is that right? Is that wrong? Do I disagree? We're not even listening when we get preached at.
Or so it might even come across as accusatory.
Yeah. So share what you're learning and share what you're on your path with her, and then let her decide whether she wants to, latch onto what you're sharing. There's power in that.
Yeah, I like that you're calling it a black belt move, because you're helping her, but you're doing it from the perspective of helping yourself. Like, look at what I'm learning, look at what I'm applying. This is cool. This is interesting. And she's going to pick up on some of that. So it is kind of a flanking maneuver, as Jocko might call it. There's another thing that I've thought a lot about. And again, I'm only speaking from experience, and I can't tell you I'm great on these things. In fact, a lot of them I probably should just go back and listen to my podcast and do what I tell you guys to do. But there's a really interesting phrase that I've learned and applied over the past several months. And the phrase is, "Oh, really?" And that's it. And what I mean by that is, when your wife tells you something, just say that. "Oh, really?" And then be quiet and listen to her share more. You don't need, when she says something, you don't need to, like, she might come to you and say, "Oh, I'm having a hard time with one of my friends today." "Oh, well, you should." No, 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 no. "Oh, really?" And then she'll tell you more. "Yeah, she said something and I know she's means the best, but it came out the wrong way." And, "Oh, really?" Yeah. And just let her go, man. Like, let her talk to you. And if "oh, really" isn't the question or the phrase, then ask an additional question. "Oh, really? How did you feel about that?" "Oh, really? Gosh, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? How are you feeling?" Man, those are powerful things. I know this is oversaid, but us as men, we want to fix things. We want to be useful. And of course, we want to be useful to the people that we love. And we think being useful is solving the problem. But I would say that being useful as a husband might be more akin to being a tool that she can use. So, for example, if I need to hammer a nail into the wall, the hammer alone isn't the solution. It's a tool that the person swinging the hammer uses to make the job more efficient. But without the person swinging the hammer isn't really going to nail the nail into the wall by itself. It's just not going to do the work. And I think we can do that as husbands. I think we can be the hammer, meaning we don't solve the problem. We just become the tool that she yields in order to solve her own problem. She's got to swing the hammer. So it might be really useful for us as men, instead of going and picking the hammer up and showing her how to do it, say, "Hey, you know what? Let me just be a sounding board for you. And you're a big girl. You're an adult. You're intelligent. So I got to assume, I mean, I married you for some of those reasons. So I got to assume you can handle it. But let me just be a sounding board so you can begin to work through your own issues and solve your own problems." And asking great questions, saying, "Oh, really?" with real intent on hearing what she has to say is powerful. Another thing is, be interested in what she's telling you. So if she's telling you about this little riff she has with her friend, just be interested in it. "Oh, really?" If she's telling you about the hobby that she's really engaged in that sounds maybe silly to you or uninteresting to you, say, "Oh, really? Tell me about that." Be interested in it. And then she'll begin to open up on more conversations, more issues. But if she feels like she's going to be judged, like, she might say, "Yeah, I'm just really mad because my friend and I ... And you're like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be mad because of X, Y, and Z." Well, why are you telling her how she should feel? You think that opens her up, or does that close her down?
Totally.
Of course it closes her down. So just say, "Oh, you're mad? I'm sorry. Man, that's hard. What are you going to do?"
We all have those relationships where we know someone that's a great listener. And it's great to be around those people. You Absolutely. Feel so valued. He was so interested. Like, I have this friend, Cash. I love Cash mostly because he laughs all the time. I'll say something that's not even funny and he's laughing. I'm thinking, man, I like this guy.
Why are you laughing?
I just love that guy because he's so, but it's just how he shows up in the world. And I think listening is the same way. It feels good to be listened to. It means that you're learning. And to our point with our spouses, we think we know them. And we think they're the same woman that she was a month ago. Well, guess what? She's not. She's evolving just like us. They're changing constantly. And that listening, at least for me, or what I'm hearing, is when we're listening that way, we're learning. We're learning about the woman that she's evolving into. We're learning how she's progressed in the world. And that just feels good. And it's good for relationships, to be seen and understood.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to the question, I think he was talking about postpartum, right?
Yeah.
Which is common. But if it's your first child, especially, and she's like, oh, I'm just having such a hard time because the baby doesn't ever sleep and I'm so tired. And you're like, well, you know what you should do is stop giving the damn baby its binky. I mean, that's what we want to say, right?
Yeah.
Just let the baby cry. Like, just go to sleep. It
It's
needs
no
to
big
learn.
deal. Yeah.
It needs to learn how to sleep through the night and cry itself to sleep. Like, that's what we say, and that's what we want to say. And maybe there's some truth to it. How's that going to work, guys? Like, in my infinite wisdom that I failed to apply, I can see pretty clearly now that doesn't work. If instead, just have some empathy. Oh, hon. Yeah, gosh, I'm sorry. I can't even imagine how difficult that must be for you, to have to be up at all hours of the night and then breastfeed the baby. And I'm sorry. Is there anything I can help with? She might say no to that, but just be aware of, what you can, and just listen. That's it. Just listen.
Yeah.
Don't solve it.
Last thought. Most employee satisfaction is a result of when they feel that they are seen and that someone understands their challenges. Not fixes them, doesn't eliminate them, that they're seen and that someone understands their challenges. Yeah. That's it. And there's just power in knowing that someone sees what you're going through, and just them seeing it is a form of supporting you in it.
Yeah.
It's weird, interesting.
Well, I'm going to share something, a personal interaction that we had, and I didn't ask you for permission, so I hope this is okay. But you had sent me a message several weeks ago. I was coming to Utah, and I had failed to give you enough notice and make sure that you were included in some of the plans that we had. And, that wasn't any sort of, devious intention on my part. It was just, I didn't think about it, right? Which is typically what it is. Never attribute to malice what could be attributed to stupidity. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time. And, you were pretty assertive in that you said, hey man, like, when you don't inform me with enough time, it makes me feel like my contribution isn't appreciated. You said something along those lines.
Yeah.
And normally I think I would have probably defended myself. Like I think, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, I would have said, well, Kip, the reason I didn't is because of this and this and this, and here's why. And I would have like defended and justified and rationalized. And I don't know, in that moment, I was pretty present. I'm like, it really doesn't matter what I think. It really, like, my justification, however warranted I feel it is, doesn't actually really matter to you.
Yeah. If you gave me the story, like, oh, well, Kip, it's because of this, I wouldn't feel any better. I want to be like,
course.
Oh, okay.
Oh, got it. Okay. Now I'm okay. No.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Instead, I think, and at least this is the way I remember it, so I hope I'm accurate. Instead, I think I wrote something like, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. I didn't mean for it to come across that way, and I'm really sorry. I will do better at that next time.
Totally.
And I was serious about it. I was genuine. Like, I will do better at that. And I think, and I hope that it showed you that, okay, what you said is valid. You felt that way. How could I say it's not valid? I can't tell you how you feel.
Totally. No, and there's power in it. It's ironic is we don't do this. It's so interesting. Like your default of how you want to reply is how we usually always want to reply to things. Well, I got a reason for that. Right. So, honey, you shouldn't be offended because of, blah, 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 blah. And we drip it up. And we actually think that somehow addresses
right.
it. And it's really interesting when all we had to say is, oh, check. I get that.
Right.
I could see how you could interpret that. Just so you know, that wasn't my intention, though.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Whoa.
That's it. Isn't that wild?
But yet we never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Next question.
Yeah. Way to put our dirty laundry.
I know. Air our dirty laundry out there.
All right. Ryan Gent, with regards to baseline assessments, and I'm assuming he's kind of referencing a post from you or something on this question. He says, with regards to baseline assessments, getting a fix on your current standing or state of play, how do you find yourself coming back to over and over again? Is there a self-assessment in your health, finance, and relationships, etc., that when you stay on track and take time to evaluate, that everything else falls in line?
That's tough because I don't fully understand the question, but I think what Ryan's alluding to is, how do you assess where you are, whether or not you're doing well, especially in some of these areas that are not real tangible? The things that come to mind, for example, might be, how do you know if you're a patient man?
Yeah.
How do you know if you're empathetic? How do you know if you're a good father? These are things that are, or a good husband. These are things that are hard to quantify. You know, you could ask yourself, how do I know if I'm successful financially? Well, are you out of debt? Are you saving money? What is your investment portfolio? What kind of income do you make? It's very tangible.
Totally.
It's very objective.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these other hard to quantify metrics, it's very subjective. So you have to objectify them. And one way that you can do that is to put in some sort of ranking structure. So for example, if it comes to fatherhood, how do you know if you're a good father? There's a lot of ways to measure that. You could measure that through time spent with your children. That's a metric. Certainly not the only, but it is a metric. You could measure it by their success. You could measure it by their grades. You could measure it by their fulfillment and happiness. There's so many different ways to measure it. And so what you can do in that situation is you can take in all these metrics that you can identify and you can pick one. So for example, we know, I don't even know if we need studies for this, just common sense tells us that if we're more present and engaged with our children, we're going to be quote unquote better fathers. Yeah. So just bump up the amount of time that you spend with them. So look at, okay, I spend on average, 30 minutes a day with my children. Can you get that to 45? Can you get that to an hour? And if you can, then we know objectively you're going to be a better father.
Yeah.
So we just look at different metrics and we start objectifying that. Another way to do it, because these are subjective metrics, is to get their opinion.
Whew. You sure? No. Don't give that advice. That's a bad idea.
But ask your kids, how am I doing? And they're, if you don't freak out and you have a track record of taking that into consideration and improving, then they're going to be pretty open about, hey, Dad,
there's no gas in the truck.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think they're going to tell you. My kids have told me. And so you ask questions. How do you feel about the amount of time that I spend with you? You don't
just listen. Don't defend.
Yeah. Don't defend and don't prompt. Like, hey, I spent a lot of time with you, right? No, that's not the question. Yeah. The question is, how do you feel about the amount of time that we spend together? Hey, if you could do anything with me this week, anything at all, what would it be? What would you want to do? Just you and me. And then you go do it. Now you don't have to guess if you're being a good dad. They're telling you, hey, Dad, if you just cook dinner with me once a week, or you took me on a date, my daughter, you took me on a date, or my son said, hey, if you just, the other day, my oldest, Brecken, he's like, hey, Dad, do you want to play basketball? He never asked me if I want to play basketball. And I almost said no because I was busy. Fortunately, I caught myself. I'm like, wait, he never asked me this. Yes.
And may never again.
Right. And they may never, depending on my answer. And I said, yes, I do want to play basketball. And I put whatever I was doing down and I went and played basketball. And it was great. We spent a half an hour and didn't really talk about anything deep or meaningful. We just had a good time together. And I don't have to question whether or not I'm being a good dad in that moment. He wanted me to play basketball. If he didn't want me to play basketball with him, he wouldn't have asked me. So I know that he's in that moment, I am being a good father by his definition, because that's what he asked of me.
Yeah. This is so critical. As some of you guys already know, I've been married before and divorced. And if you asked me during my first marriage if I were a good husband, I'm not exaggerating, I would have said, yeah, oh yeah, I'm amazing. And then I got confronted eventually at one point where the single person in this world that knew me more than anybody else, that knew my ins, my outs, has been intimate with me in ways that no other person has ever been. Like, my person literally came to me and said, I don't want to be with you. I'd rather be single. I'd rather be a single parent. I'd rather go through the misery of a divorce than be with you. Holy crap. I was like so off target because I was so fixated on woe is me and my circumstance and everything else that I thought I was oblivious to it. And so I just, the iteration, or I guess I'm trying to reiterate the importance of this evaluation. Man, men do not assume that everything's buttoned up and okay. If we're not having intentionality around checking ourselves in regards to being fathers and husbands, there's a very high probability that things are going to get rough in those relationships. And I've even seen it. We've seen this even in the Iron Council. Back in the day when I was running a team, I've seen guys like, oh, Kip, my marriage is solid right now. I'm going to double down in these other areas on my battle plan. And I'm going to intentionally neglect the whole marriage thing. And like 3 months later, it's like, yeah, my wife like mentioned she wants to divorce me. You know what I mean? It's like, geez, guys, like intentionality. We can't just assume it's okay.
Well, you know what's amazing about that is just think about the things that we're willing to research and pore over and spend time on. You know, you want to make a new gun purchase. How many hours of research do you pour into what gun should I buy? What caliber? What grain of bullet should I shoot? What brand? Where's the best place? Do I get it at Sportsman's or Cabela's, or do I build my own gun? And what species is this hunting rifle perfect for? Or another one, even I think maybe even more silly, but who am I to say, is the amount of hours that we'll spend on fantasy football, researching who this guy is and what last week was, and does he have any injuries, and then he's playing this opponent, and that opponent is good against the run but not great against the pass, and at this stadium in this temperature this quarterback tends to throw really well, but in an open stadium at lower temperatures. I mean, the things that we'll spend time on. And I'm not throwing just you guys into me too. And yet we can't sit down and ask our kids how they're feeling about the way we're showing up as fathers.
Or research on how to be an amazing husband or father, right?
Yeah. Again, I don't want this to come across as like me standing on the soapbox saying, thou shalt. It's me standing here shoulder to shoulder with you guys like, hey guys, I think probably we ought to do a better job here. I think we can reevaluate how we spend our time and maybe direct that towards something better. And you know when we'll do it? When we lose the thing that we say we love. Then we're like, oh, I should evaluate that. Yeah, we should have evaluated it before. You didn't. So let's do something about it now.
Totally. Jaden Miranda just went on a first date with a woman who asked me out. Very mature. But one of the things I've told myself.
Wait, he said very mature? Or you said
very mature.
Oh, yeah, she's very mature.
Yeah.
What is asking that? Okay.
Just went on a first date with a woman who asked me out. I don't know why he would add that part.
No, I'm actually curious, but it said she's very mature. I wonder if she's very mature has to do with her asking him out. I didn't see the correlation.
It makes sense. It makes sense here in a second.
Yeah.
So she's very mature. But one of the things I told myself was to find a woman who had a career path set and pursuing? Well, she is in college, but doesn't know what she's looking to do. Just something in the mission field. Now, that being said, I'm interested, but not sure I want to, as that is a big thing for me. Basically asking, am I being too critical about that? AKA finding a woman that already has a career, or am I failing myself by wanting to be open to the idea by sacrificing that one thing?
I don't think, who am I to say what you're being too critical of? Like,
yeah.
if
it's important to you,
me, if you're asking me, like, I don't want a woman who's career oriented. That's not what I want.
Yeah. Like if you wanted to have kids and like,
right.
It comes with a package.
Right. And it's not a bad package. It just comes with a package. And if you're not interested in that package, then probably don't pursue that package.
Yeah.
So no, I don't know if you're being too critical. If you know what you want and it's somebody with a career path, that said, people have potential, right? And she might be in college, but she might be saying, hey, I'm interested in a career in medicine, and I'm just finishing up college, and then I'm going to be on an intern or a residency after medical school, and then I'm going to go into, I'm going to become an OBGYN. Okay, she might not be on the path per se, but she's telling you that she's interested in a career, and therefore, she's going that direction, and I think that's okay. But if she's young and she's in college, I mean, she's not on any path right now.
Yeah. But there is a characteristic of people that get after it, right? Like, those people that are go-getters. And so you could probably see that regardless of where she's at on the path, if she's kind of getting after it in life.
But I would ask and have the conversations about, and maybe, I don't know, you went on one date. I don't know that I'd be asking like you're going to commit to the woman, but I think dating is, to me, the purpose of dating is so you can find a lifelong partner. That to me is the reason you would date. So if that's of interest to you, then I think you probably should ask, like, hey, what are your plans after college? Are you interested in starting a family? Do you not want a family? You're interested more in the career pursuit, and just ask.
Yeah. You're not marrying her.
And if she's like, no, I'm not interested in having a family, I'm just interested in pursuing a career. Okay, that's more enticing. Or if she's like, yeah, I'm interested in being a homemaker and a housewife, and I'm doing college, so I always have this degree, and it's good. I can make good money, but I fully plan on starting a family and staying at home. It's good. It just may not be compatible with you.
Yeah. I don't know why I just have to ask it. I think it's just a generally good thing that we should be doing. But Jaden, I would ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you're clear on the why. Like, because you've obviously put a lot of weight on this, that like, oh, if I'm going to get married, it needs to be a woman that's already has a career. Why? What does that mean? Does it mean that, just get clear on what that means for you, and just make sure that you're not like being narrow-minded in regards to, or making too many assumptions of what that means. So just get clear on that there's some value there.
I agree. And I actually, just personal opinion here, so take it for what it's worth. I think more men should be considering women who aren't interested in a career path and are more interested in being at home and raising a family and homeschooling their children. Now, I know that's personal opinion.
Yep.
So take it for what it's worth. But I think that leads to a path of happiness and fulfillment, maybe more so than the career-oriented path for both of you. That's my opinion.
Yeah. All right, Mike Roos, do you have any book recommendations for a season of transition that isn't too heavy reading? Season of transition that isn't too heavy reading. We have adopted our daughter.
Something from Dr. Seuss that you could read about green eggs and ham or something. And trying new things. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's just a funny question. Not too heavy. Lots of pictures in this book, please.
Big letters, very short.
We're just messing with you. Let's go finish the question.
Yeah, we have adopted our daughter. I have gotten a new job, sold our house, are moving across the country. We have done all of this in Q1 of this year. I don't want to lose my habit of reading, but I don't have much bandwidth of all these life changes happening so rapidly. Audible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shameless plug. Have you read Sovereignty and the Masculinity Manifesto?
It's very almost like a child's book, big letters, lots of pictures.
If I wrote it, you know it's safe for that, for sure. There's a pretty good book that I would recommend that is one of my favorites, and that is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
I promise you, that was already in my head when he was like, short read or whatever. I was like, we got a book. The same thing.
Yes, it's obviously the information is great. It's powerful. It's taught, especially with the transition, that brings a lot of mental weight to it, as you're transitioning a new thing. So your mindset and the way you're thinking about and processing information is important. So, and it's a very quick read, so that the other one I would suggest is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Very short read. And the whole premise of the book talks about the resistance in many different forms. And as you're transitioning and making changes in your life, there's going to be some resistance that manifests itself, and being able to deal with and address that is going to be important. Very quick read. So there's a couple for you.
Yeah. I had another one I was going to read off, but I can't find it actually. I mean, even like books like, and maybe it's not like a quick read, but you're kind of looking like, can I read a little bit and just kind of soak my brain into it because I don't have limited time? I think As a Man Thinketh is perfect for that, because I swear with that book, I just want to highlight the whole book. Like you could read a page and just sit with it and go, yeah, I've been edified in just reading a page or two. So that's one of the benefits of that book. But the other one is Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. That book kind of resonates that same way with me, where there's just solid nuggets of data, and I didn't have to read long to get to it.
Nice.
And that's Gordon Livingston. Great book.
I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. I assume I got that book from you. So you're like my reading. Your Tuesday shows is like usually my book playlist.
Yeah. Not that one wasn't for me. The other one you could read if you're not is the Bible. And it's obviously
data
broken up into stories and lessons, and that's valuable too.
All right, Brad Yarbrough, any advice for setting boundaries when working remotely from home while being a husband and a father? How to dedicate time to work uninterrupted while also helping around the house at the same as time allows. Context: I have a 3-year-old son, 1-year-old daughter. Son is just starting to understand what it means when dad is in a meeting.
So there's a phrase that threw up a little bit of a warning for me. You can't establish boundaries and then say things like, I'll do things as time allows. Those are contradictory. As time allows connotates that there's no boundary. It's just you do it whenever is convenient or whenever you can squeeze it in. And that's not a boundary. That's not a rule.
And no one's going to know when that is. Yeah.
So that is a problem right there. So what I would suggest, there's 3 things. There's time. Well, there's really 2 things. There's time and there's space. And those are the 2 things you need to manage. That's where you set boundaries. So boundaries on time might be, I'm just throwing out an arbitrary schedule. It could be different for you, so take it for what it's worth. But from 9 to 11:30 is dad's time at work. I'm not playing. I'm not doing chores around the house. I'm not running errands. From 9 to 11:30 is time at work. From 11:30 to 1 is lunch and playtime. So I'll play with you from 11:30 to 1. We'll grab lunch. If we're going to go out and grab a bite to eat, we'll do that from 11:30 to 1. From 1 to 5 is dad time. We're not playing. We're not chore. No, work time. But at 5, yes, I will definitely do it with you. And then the way that you communicate these boundaries is you just tell them the time schedule, and then you have to actually stick to it. So if your little son tries to step over that boundary, you reinforce it. Nope. Hey, but I really want to. That's the hard part. I really want to play, because you do. I can hear them now. My kids are out there. I want to play with them, but they know that this is not playtime. This is dad's working time, and here's why it's important. So you have time, and then the other one is space. If your office is in the living room, you're not going to create a boundary. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you need to have, maybe it's an office separate in the house somewhere on the other side of the house. That's what it is for me. Nobody really lives on this side of the house, and it's my office. The door is closed. It closes. They know when it's closed. It's a boundary. But you got to have a separate space where you do your work, and you don't don't do this. Don't bring your laptop into the living room when you're watching a movie at night. Don't do that, because that's family space.
Yeah.
So honor it as family space. And then your workspace is where work happens. Same thing with your phone. I'm not great at this, but the phone doesn't come out when we're eating dinner, for example. Like, I'm honoring the relationship I have with my kids in that time. So don't conflate environments and don't conflate time.
I like it. All right, Paul Timler. My question is concerning managing debt while still living a life of abundance and not deprivation. We have been working to pay down some credit cards over the last year. My wife and I have discussions to focus on eliminating the debt as fast as possible. I am someone who can live very sparsely, getting by on the bare minimum in order to achieve a goal. My wife, however, likes to buy things that I see unnecessary and detrimental to our goals of paying off the debt, but makes her happy. She acknowledges how this affects our goals, but also doesn't want to live like a broke ass college student, quote unquote. Is there a happy medium between sacrificing current comfort for future satisfaction and living good in the now?
Well, you might already be living it, because she might actually want to spend more than she's currently spending as it is. So you might already be living in that happy medium, but I don't know. And you don't know either unless you're having the conversation about it. So yeah, I wish I could tell you there was a simple fix to this. Like, she would just comply and just not spend any money whatsoever. And you know what? She actually might, if she saw the writing on the wall. You know, if debt was going to be paid off, and let's just hypothetically say 6 months, and you told her, hey, hun, please, for me, let's double down. Let's do this for 6 months. And then in 6 months, we will open up our discretionary spending. And that's going to be, $200 a month or $500 a month or what, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But you communicate with her what that is and what you guys will spend that on and what she can spend that on. And even articulating why it will be better for her to live like a broke ass college student for 6 months, so that 7+ months moving forward, there's never a concern any longer. And maybe you haven't communicated that effectively or clearly. Maybe it's just a matter of personality. I know for my wife, and my daughter is actually very much the same way, is they communicate their love through food. So when I'm on a diet and I'm locking in my food and my daughter comes and says, hey, Dad, do you want this brownie that I made?
It's like a form of service to you.
She's like, hey, I love you. And I'm like, your love's no good to me.
Your love is covered in lies.
Yeah. Right. So that's really hard for her, because she's like, I say no, and she's, oh my gosh, he doesn't love me. And so I get out ahead of that, and I tell her, hey, hon, I know that you love me. I know that you care about me, but I'm doing this diet for 6 months. I have a contest with my friends, and we are trying to lock this in, and I'm going to win some money and bragging rights if I win this. And so I just want to let you know, I love your brownies. I love your cupcakes and your treats, but I won't be able to eat those for the next 6 months. I don't want you to be upset, it's just important to me that you see that I'm going to be disciplined during this time. And then you get out ahead of it. It could be the same thing with your wife, because she might be soothing herself through spending. So when you say don't spend, she might interpret it as don't take care of yourself, even potentially her own mental health, because people soothe themselves through spending. Some people,
because it means something to them. Yeah. Depending on how they're raised. And yeah.
Women also tend to nest more than men do. So if she can't buy things for the house, she might actually interpret that as her not being a good wife to you. And you're thinking, well, a good wife wouldn't spend the money and get us out of debt. And she's thinking, well, a good wife would buy these little trinkets and these little decorations and spend more on food than necessary, because that's what a good wife does to take care of her house. Like, there's so much more here that you need to get to the root of and get on the same page. And very little of it has to do with the actual money, but all of the stories and the narratives and the experiences and the belief systems and patterns that go behind the spending.
Yeah.
Another one is she could have just been broke when she was little, and her mom, and like, this is real. She was broke as a child, her parents, and they always fought about money, and they were so broke and destitute, and they ended up getting a divorce. And she interpreted that the reason they got a divorce is because dad wouldn't spend any money and mom was spending all the money, or vice versa. And we could never have anything nice. And that created all the rifts. And now history is repeating itself.
Yeah.
And she's trying to do things based on her experience and what she told herself as a 6, 7, 8-year-old little girl.
Yeah. And that was all lack of stability and trust and fear. And
there's a lot here. So a lot of good discussions you can have beyond money. Just where is this stemming from, and what does it mean to spend money? And some of that will just be, you'll have to observe it, and others you'll have to talk and ask her about it.
Yeah. All right. One more question, mostly because I want you to answer this. All right. Chase Kimball. How to go about dealing with rumors that are not true, getting back to your boss and affecting the way your boss sees you. Should I do nothing? Should I address it with my boss? For example, it was said that I went to the bathroom to do drugs. I can't fathom where this came from or why someone would say this, but it seems to have put me under a microscope with my boss. This obviously is not true, and it has created tension in the workplace for me. My immediate reaction is to just keep my head down and work harder. But with something like this, it doesn't necessarily have to do with my work performance. Thanks.
Let's assume that you are going to go talk to your boss about this. I'm changing my thinking as I'm working through this. I was going to say, just, you don't need to, but depending on the rumor, you might actually need to address it, especially if it has to do with legal activity on company premises.
Yeah, this kind of changes once it goes into that legal realm.
Yeah.
I'm curious if your advice changes, if it's on the legal side or not. But
so now that I was going to say, don't deal with it, just put your head down. But now that here's what I would say. If it has to do with this, because this is a legal ramification, I would actually address my boss. If you were my boss, Kip, I'd say, hey, Kip, can I come speak with you this afternoon at 2? And you're like, sure. And here's how I would address it. Kip, Mr. Sorensen, whatever's appropriate. Hey, I've come to find Dr. Sorensen.
Professor Sorensen. That's good.
Yes, Professor. Yeah. Also doctor, right? I didn't go to 8 years of school to be called Mr. Sorensen. You went to 8 years of school so people could call you a doctor?
What a waste of time.
Idiot.
Idiot Sorensen.
So I come to you and I say, look, it's come to my attention that there is some whisperings and a story or a rumor going on about me doing drugs in the office or in the bathroom. And for what it's worth, I want to let you know that is not true. I don't know how that got started. I don't know why that's a rumor, but I want you to know that I'm committed to the company that I don't do drugs, and that I will continue to work hard and be the employee that you hired me to be. That's it. That's the only thing you need to say. And then from there, you drive on. Did you hear that, Kip, or did it cut out for you?
Yeah, it cut out for a minute.
Okay. And that's it. You address it once, one time. You don't go back over and over again and like, hey, do you believe me? Like, what do you think now? No, you address it once like a man. You tell them it's not behavior I'm engaged in. I'm going to be a good employee. And then your course of action is to be so good at your job, not to brown nose, but just the inherent goodness of being good at your job, that nobody ever believes anything negative about you ever.
Yeah.
That's it. And then you just let the chips fall where they may. That's how I would personally handle that situation.
Okay. So it's not about drugs, and it's just a rumor that, I don't know, maybe something soft, that you're not a team player, or you always push back, or I don't know. You've
I wouldn't
formed a
address
reputation.
that.
Just heads down, show up powerfully, execute.
No, because if somebody said I'm not a team player, oh yeah, Ryan's not a team player, and everybody else knows me as a team player, then that has no relevancy or bearing in people's thoughts. And you know, actually, what it does is it makes the other person look petty, whoever's spreading that, because they're like, Ryan, what are you talking about?
Joking?
I was up against a deadline last month, and he stayed an hour late to help me go through some reports, and he didn't have to do that. He didn't even ask me for anything in return. Like, you want to be so good at your job that nobody ever believes anything negative about you. But yeah, if there's something legal or like it impacts the company, you know, like sexist situations might be a situation that needs to get brought up. Drugs, stealing from the company, these kind of things. Yeah. But just whisperings of, oh, Ryan's a jerk or Ryan's not a team player, just be the antithesis of that.
Yeah. Curious, Ryan, would you add any thoughts around communicating what you're doing? Because I do feel like sometimes guys will go heads down and they'll just get stuff done, but maybe their work isn't being noticed, isn't being communicated. You know what I mean? Or is that manipulative from your perspective? Like, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it very easily could reek of desperation and manipulation. You know, if you're walking around explaining all the things you're doing, it could come across as you reaching for compliments or you trying to make sure you're noticed, and it might rub people, including your supervisors, the wrong way.
Yeah.
If the opportunity presents itself, then, you know, I think a little marketing on behalf of yourself is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But also you can do it in a humble way. So for example, if maybe a supervisor recognizes the excellence of a job or a task or an assignment, you know, I wouldn't say, well, I did that. Yeah, thanks. I did that. I might say, oh, I'm glad that you noticed. Our team was really proud of the way that project came together. You see the difference?
Yeah. Well, and now that I ask it a little bit, because I'm trying to, we've said this before, especially when it comes to spouses, right? That there's value in, if you're working on something, to let your family know, right? To let your spouse know, like, hey, you know what I mean? I'm going to get on a diet and I'm communicating these things. I'm working on these things, but it's kind of on the front end of that. And so maybe, and I don't know, you know, I'll pause here in a second, let you respond, but maybe those are good areas to communicate even in the workplace when it's an adjustment or a change that you're planning on working on. So it's not necessarily communicating of like, oh, I'm amazing, I did all these things. But if you're seeing some areas of gaps that you're addressing as an employee, you might want to communicate that to your boss, like, hey, wanted to let you know something I'm working on is improving my communication. I realize that I don't do as good follow-up, and so I'm going to be implementing this. Your feedback and suggestion around this would be greatly appreciated. That would be highly valuable. It gets you some positive feedback as well. But I understand you want to.
You got to be careful though. And look, I'll tell you really what it comes down to. People recognize energy very quickly, and they know why you're doing something. Like, you know.
Yeah.
You know. For example, there's
if
always
it's not
the one
genuine,
idiot.
right?
Well, it's genuine. It's always going to be genuine. But what? Genuinely trying to get praise and accolades, or genuinely trying to serve the company? So it's not actually about whether or not you're genuine. It's whether or not the motive is
the intent
appropriate.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it's kind of like the guy in the office who always at the end of the meeting, the guy says, "Does anybody else have any questions?" And the one guy asked the dumbest question that you could ever ask, like just dumb. And contrary to popular belief, there are dumb questions. And that guy asks it every time. And you know he's not asking because he's curious or he needs clarification. He's asking because he wants to be acknowledged. Like, oh, this guy's interested. I really like this guy because he's asking dumb questions. Nobody ever says that, but that's why that guy does that. So the motive is the reason. Okay. Is your motive. So for example, if you're, there's a way to do it humbly. So if you're dieting or changing your schedule at home with your workouts, let's say, for example, you wouldn't go to your wife and say, well, you know, I'm going to work out 7 days a week now. I just wanted you to know. Like, what? Why are you saying that? But what I think would be more appropriate, which would indicate pure motive, is to say, hey, hon, I'm going to be working out a little bit more. I'm training for this event. And I just wanted to know, with my training schedule changing a little bit, if there's certain days or nights of the week that may be more challenging, or I should kind of work around because I don't want to mess with the family dynamic you have going on. It's a very humble way to approach it. And it also lets the other person know, like, oh, they care about the family in spite of their own desires.
Or you could just like, hey, hon, I'm trying to get better in shape. My expectation, just to be super clear, is that we should be having sex roughly about 100% more than we are currently today. Just want to let you in the know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, there's value in being forthright in some of that information too. So, but there is a trap, and this, I think we're beating this one down. There is a trap in communicating intent, and it's not always bad, but it is something you need to be aware of, is that now you better hold yourself to it.
Yeah.
Because you're creating another little point of being out of integrity in somebody's mind. So if you say, hey guys, family, want to do a family meeting, let's get everybody together. Hey, just want you to know I'm doing this diet. Just wanted you to be aware. The minute you slip, you just told everybody you're doing the diet. So the minute you slip, they may not vocalize it, but they'll acknowledge it. They'll see it.
Totally.
They know they know dad just yesterday said he's going to do a diet, and now he's having ice cream.
Yeah.
So if you're going to tell people you're going to do something, now you're really, really locked into it. Or you might just keep it to yourself, unless you want the added accountability, and then that's fine too.
Yeah.
Just something to be aware of.
Funny story on this. So we have a swear jar. A lot of people know this. We have a swear jar in our house because I told the girls I need to stop swearing as much as I do. And my commitment to them is that I'd give them $1 every single time I swear. My daughter has found out that these podcasts are on YouTube. So those guys, you guys that don't know, go to YouTube and you can watch podcasts there. So she started going in history, right? Thinking this counts, right? She'd be like, hey, on the podcast. And I'm like, honey, that was like a year ago, right? Like, you know what I mean? So it's gotten out.
I'm gonna help him.
Yeah,
I'm actually gonna help him.
You're like,
hey
I'm gonna do a soundbite, have Todd create a video of all the swear words. Yeah,
just so you know, your dad swore on the podcast twice today.
Yeah,
he owes you $2.
I did once today, but it was just to clarify in case she watches this. It was in quotes, and I was quoting the individual. So
no.
I did.
No,
actually,
ladies.
It was in quotes.
I believe that, but ladies, don't let your dad use that one. He could have replaced that word or said it was the S word or something. He could have done something else, but he chose to utter and mumble the words.
Good times,
right, man. Well, let's call it a day. You want to bring us home?
Yeah. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. You guys have a chance to join us in the Iron Council. Get ready. This is how we work. We open it up for Q2. So we'll open the doors. You can join us in roughly about 2 weeks, and it will only be open for a limited time and then we'll close membership for Q2. So to learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And I'll just a call out. If you're not, you know what, we don't want, and I'm going to go on the limb here, and I assume you agree, Ryan, we don't want people that's not ready. So if you're not ready to get on the court, you're not ready to level up, don't waste people's time.
Or yours.
So if you're serious, like if you're honestly serious about making changes in your life and showing up more powerfully, then join us. If you're not, keep listening. We'll be here for when you're ready.
Yeah.
But if you're not ready, don't join us. So
a pet peeve I have is somebody who joins and then they'll join for like 2 or 3 days and they're like, hey man, I dug around a little bit and I'm not going to be able to commit. And I'll give them their money back. I don't play games with people's money. Like I'm not going to say, well, you signed. No, I'll give you your money back. If you've been there for 24 hours or even a week or two, like, fine, I'll give you your money back, but just don't. All right.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to take exorbitant amount of time and energy, a couple hours a week, maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, engaging with the guys. Like just don't. If you're not going to do it, it's fine, but don't even sign up. Yeah. But if you're going to spend 20 to 30 minutes a day, couple hours a week, you're going to invest, you're going to pour into it. You're going to try it, faithfully try it for a while. Yeah, man, we'd love to have you.
Yeah. Intentionality. And let's be frank, that's advice for all areas of our lives, right? If we're married, then be married. Be all in. If you have a job and you don't like the job, until that changes, get all in. And that's what we're asking of you guys that join us in the Iron Council. Also, to connect with Mr. Michler on the socials, you can find him at Ryan Michler on Twitter and Instagram. And then I'm assuming we still have some discounts on the store.
You assume incorrectly.
Done.
Yep, okay. Done. The store is actually closed right now. We're doing some revamping and some logistical changes. So we will get that up and running as soon as we can, but the store is actually closed for the time being.
Got it. And to know when that store opens back up, the way you do that, right, is connect with Ryan on social media or go to orderofman.com to learn more and sign up for newsletters. That's how you'll stay in the know.
That's right. Cool. Well, Kip, I appreciate you guys. Great questions today. Hopefully we gave you some good answers, and we will be back. We will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.